Have you ever noticed how telling the truth out loud can shine a spotlight on what's really happening? Exposing what's broken, revealing who stands with us, and forcing a choice between comfort and courage. Welcome to Mythologizing the Bible, where we'll be taking a look at 3 readings from the Christian Bible through the lens of sacred myth. As we reflect on the readings for the 20th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Cycle C, we'll explore how honest speech often divides before it heals, how focusing on core values builds endurance, and how everyday allyship, like using your privilege to pull someone else out of harm's way, can turn friction into real change. In this episode, we're asking an honest question. What if we drop the supernatural framing and treat these stories as a playbook for courage and solidarity where we live? What small scheduled step would make that real this week? Because peace without truth isn't peace, it's quiet complicity. So grab a comfy seat, a glass of your favorite beverage, and let's look at some ancient stories together in this edition of Mythologizing the Bible, where we'll be exploring the readings for the 20th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Cycle C of the Roman Catholic Lectionary. In this series, we're exploring readings from the Bible through the lens of sacred myth, looking for interpretations and lessons that don't demand a belief in the supernatural. What that means from a practical standpoint is that we will assume that these stories and writings are fiction, written by pre-scientific people with their own agendas and different audiences. Now, you might agree with the lessons I find, but I encourage you to look for something that rings true to you. Part of the beauty of understanding these writings as sacred myths is that we're free to interpret them for ourselves. We're free to learn the lessons that we need right now. So with that, let's dive in. As I said, tonight we'll be looking at the readings for the 20th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Cycle C. Our first reading is from Jeremiah. It's chapter 38, verses 4 through 6, and verses 8 through 10. Our second reading is from the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. And our gospel reading is from Luke. It's chapter 12, verses 49 through 53. Now we'll start by going through all 3 of the readings, then we'll look for the messages and the main lesson in each one. Finally, we'll bring everything together, look at what it means for us today, and talk about where we go from here. And with that, let's begin. Our first reading is from Jeremiah. In those days, the officials said to the king, "This man should be put to death. He is discouraging the soldiers who are left in this city, as well as all the people, by the things he is saying to them. This man is not seeking the good of these people, but their ruin." "He is in your hands," King Zedekiah answered. "The king can do nothing to oppose you." So they took Jeremiah and put him into the cistern of Melchijah, the king's son, which was in the courtyard of the guard. They lowered Jeremiah by ropes into the cistern. It had no water in it, only mud, and Jeremiah sank down into the mud. Ebed-melech went out of the palace and said to him, "My lord the king, these men have acted wickedly in all they have done to Jeremiah the prophet. They have thrown him into a cistern where he will starve to death when there is no longer any bread in the city." Then the king commanded Ebed-melech the Cushite, "Take 30 men from here with you, and lift Jeremiah the prophet out of the cistern before he dies." Our second reading is from the letter to the Hebrews. Brothers and sisters, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And our gospel reading is from Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "I have come to bring fire on the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. But I have a baptism to undergo, and what constraint I am under until it is completed. Do you think I came to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but division. From now on there will be 5 in one family divided against each other, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law." All right, so let's go back and take a critical look at these readings and see what learnings and lessons we can find if we dig around just a little bit. So our first reading was from Jeremiah. And in this reading, Jeremiah he's that uncomfortable voice we find in almost every era. The one who won't soften the facts just because the room wants flattery. He knew the social cost of honesty, and yet he just kept speaking up anyway. Now that's the first humanistic lesson here. Truth-telling isn't about being contrarian. It's about aligning what we say with what people need to hear to protect dignity and safety and the common good, even when it angers those who benefit from the shady shit that's going on. So Jeremiah gets thrown down in the cistern to die because he's been calling out the shady shit that's been going on. And here comes Ebed-Melech, the insider who musters a little courage and uses his access to help Jeremiah. He doesn't grandstand, he simply intervenes. That's allyship in action. It's someone with proximity to power choosing to stand up for a truth teller when it's risky and inconvenient. In our world, that might look like the colleague who pushes back on a harmful policy, the neighbor who speaks up at a school board meeting, or the team lead who refuses to look the other way when a vulnerable person is being targeted. You know, real change rarely happens because one lone voice shouts louder. It usually happens because someone with leverage hears what the brave lone voice is saying and thinks, yeah, this ain't right, and then does something about it. If you come from a Christian background, today's version of courage might mean challenging Christian nationalism or calling out all of the religious institutions that are willing to trade compassion for control. For any of us, religious or not, the call is the same. Defend human rights and human dignity, even when it costs you approval, access, or comfort. Now, courage isn't recklessness. It's the disciplined choice to put people over our own convenience, to tell the truth clearly, and to continue acting with integrity even when the pressure is on. So the main lesson I got from our first reading is that it's important to speak truth to power. This story isn't an invitation to martyr yourself for drama. It's an invitation to work for steady courage. Name what's wrong, protect those at risk, and use whatever influence you have to pull people out of the cisterns they didn't choose. Find your Ebed-Melechs and then be one for someone else. Build coalitions. Document the truth. And keep your integrity, even when it seems more expedient to set it aside. Because the only way communities stay humane is when ordinary people refuse to be silent in the face of harm. It's important to speak truth to power. Our second reading was from the letter to the Hebrews. And if we set aside all the religious framing, this passage is really a training plan for endurance. Identify what weighs you down, set a clear aim, and keep moving. Instead of fixing our eyes on Jesus, well, fix your focus on values. Values that stand on their own merit. Things like human dignity, fairness, compassion, truth, accountability. Boy, we could use a lot more of that these days. Then shed the stuff that drags you off course. Cynicism, performative piety, or fear of disapproval. But also things like the comfort of remaining silent. We need to speak up. Or what about the seemingly endless outrage cycles that take up all of our energy but really don't change a damn thing? Sometimes turning off the news and focusing on doing something is by far the best choice. But it's a marathon, not a sprint. And endurance isn't magic. It's disciplined attention to what matters most. And when this reading talks about Jesus enduring the cross, we don't need theological explanations that they develop decades later in order to find meaning. If there was a historical Yeshua, he was likely a Jewish apocalyptic prophet who confronted Roman power and the complacency of the Israelite elite. Exactly the kind of voice empires try to silence. Even as myth, the story functioned as an archetype of principled resistance, someone who accepts the cost of telling the truth. And strip away the supernatural claims and you still have a model of courage that says, if you believe in human dignity, act like it, even when the personal cost is very high. Surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, something that was said in the beginning of that reading. That can be read as community, right? The mentors, ancestors, the organizers, and everyday neighbors who live, whose lives just remind us why we stay in the struggle. Treat the work like a marathon. Pace yourself. Rest on purpose. Recommit when you stumble. And be aware of the cloud of witnesses, the community that's around you to help. Let your values be the fuel. When fatigue or setbacks tempt you to quit, well, think about what happens if you give up or if you keep going. Because if you prioritize people's safety, their freedom and flourishing, then you'll find your second wind. Anyway, the main lesson I got from our second reading is that our values should inspire us to keep fighting. This isn't about heroic suffering for its own sake. It's about staying loyal to the people and the principles that'll outlast the headlines. Name the weights you'll drop, choose the values you'll fix your eyes on, and then gather a community that helps you endure. Because when our actions align with our deepest values, we can absorb the costs and keep moving toward a more humane world. Our values should inspire us to keep fighting. Okay, our final reading was from the Gospel of Luke, and let me start by pointing out that in this reading, words like fire and division aren't a call to hostility. They're a rather blunt acknowledgement that living by clear values disrupts, let's say, comfortable illusions that so many people like. Real peace isn't appeasement. It's the product of honesty and justice. When we move from go along to get along to do the right thing, well, fault lines start to appear. In families, workplaces, and communities, the point isn't to split people up. The point is to stop pretending that harmful patterns are just fine and dandy. Integrity creates friction before it creates change. Jesus had already been baptized by John, so when he talked about needing to undergo a baptism, he was likely talking about what we might call a baptism by fire, which is a symbol of trial and purification. Right, think of the baptism by fire as the period when your values move from just a private conviction to public practice. Right? When you set boundaries with a relative who's a bigot, or when you refuse to spread dehumanizing rhetoric, when you step up to report wrongdoing, or when you leave a religion that's trading compassion for control. It costs something. Awkward dinners, lost status, maybe fewer invitations, maybe some professional risk. But the heat also purifies. You start to shed things like people-pleasing and cynicism and false belonging. But in return, you gain things like clarity, courage, and definitely allies who you can actually trust. Now, this isn't about glorifying conflict. It's about choosing courageous kindness over quiet complicity. Hold firm lines without dehumanizing anyone. Some relationships will change or even end, but new communities form around dignity, fairness, and care. Any short-term disruption will make way for a sturdier, more honest peace. The kind that doesn't require you to just bite your tongue and look the other way. So the main lesson I got from our gospel reading is that enduring hardship for our values is transformational. This reading tells us to expect to feel some heat when we live our values out loud, but to see that heat as the forge, not the finish line. Name what you'll no longer tolerate. Practice nonviolent truth-telling. Seek principled allies. And then practice staying kind but strong. On the other side of that fire is a self and a community that's been tempered for real good. Enduring hardship for our values is transformational. All right, let's review the lessons we've talked about so far. In our first reading from Jeremiah, the main lesson I came away with was, it's important to speak truth to power. In our second reading from Hebrews, the main lesson I got was, our values should inspire us to keep fighting. And finally, the main lesson I got from our gospel reading was, enduring hardship for our values is transformational. When we strip away the religious framing, these readings offer a pretty clear game plan. Name what's wrong, even when it's unpopular. Anchor yourself in values that stand on their own merit, and then expect a little heat as the cost of honesty. Start by protecting people, challenging harmful systems, and using whatever influence you have for the common good. Then travel light. Drop the distractions and the need for approval, and keep your focus on things like dignity, fairness, compassion, and truth. When pushback comes, and it will, don't confuse friction with failure. That pressure is the fire that hardens courage and clarifies who your allies really are. So here's the invitation. Keep your voice steady, your values visible, and your mind open. Build coalitions. Pace yourself and keep moving toward a world where more people are safe and free. And remember that we don't need permission to do the right thing. We just need commitment. Let's choose that. Let's hold the line and become the kind of people who make positive change inevitable. So let's step back and take another look at these readings overall and see if we can figure out what these lessons really mean to us in our daily lives. To do this, I'll try to answer two questions. So what and now what? Okay, so what? Why should we care about any of this? Well, we should care about this because people's rights and their safety are on the line right now. Shaking our heads in disgust as we keep scrolling through the latest horrific news stories won't stop policies that target dissent or target neighbors who've done nothing wrong. Showing up matters. Join peaceful protests. Attend local meetings. Learn and share the know your rights information with others. Document interactions as legal observers and support rapid response networks. They're out there and they're growing. When masked ICE agents try to intimidate or disappear law-abiding community members, a calm, visible, nonviolent crowd really can change the outcome and the message. This is important because privilege is a tool, and we're responsible for how we use it. If you have status, connections, time, or money, that's leverage. Remember our first reading when Ebed-Melech stepped in on behalf of Jeremiah? Right? Use your leverage and be an Ebed-Melech with it. Use your access to call decision makers. Be a witness. Fund legal aid. Open doors for organizers. And protect those who are at risk. The more insulation you have from the consequences, the more you can afford to stand in the gap. Loudly, consistently, and publicly for the people who can't. We should care because outrage burns hot and fast. But values keep us moving for the long haul. This is a marathon. Choose the values you'll focus on. Dignity, fairness, compassion, truth, whatever they are for you. Build small weekly habits around them. One meeting, one call, one donation, one neighbor helped. Find or form a coalition. Share the load. Make sure you rest on purpose and then recommit when you stumble a little. Persistence beats performative fury every time. Stop expressing anger and start getting shit done. This is important because stepping up changes us and our community for the better. Nonviolent resistance can feel like a baptism by fire, but the heat clarifies who we are. We become steadier, braver, and more connected. Our neighborhoods become harder to bully and easier to trust. On the other side of the discomfort is the relief of knowing that we lived our values and had our neighbors' backs when it counted. If we stay silent, the harm spreads. If we show up together, we draw a line and hold it. Let's be the people who make it safer to be human. And the last question I try to answer is, now what? What are we supposed to do? Where do we go from here? Well, we've just named why this matters. Right? People's safety, our shared dignity, and building the kind of community we want to live in. And we've said we'll pace ourselves like it's a marathon. We'll use our leverage like Ebed-Melech and expect a little heat without mistaking it for failure. So now it's time to turn conviction into a calendar entry. It's time to prioritize it. The goal isn't grand gestures. It's just one clear step that lines up with your values and actually helps someone. So with that in mind, here's your question for the week. Where specifically can you use your leverage, your position, your time, or your resources to help your community this week? And what exactly will you do, by when, and with whom? The idea is to zero in on one concrete way to use your values and whatever leverage you have to help people in your community right now. By answering this question, you'll move from a general concern to a specific action. This can help you pace yourself for the long haul while also practicing the kind of steady courage that changes both you and your community. And when you write this out, you'll turn vague worry or general anger into a simple, specific plan. Right? Choose one situation. a neighbor, a local group, a policy fight, a local charity, right? Choose one situation and then name one action. Show up, call, donate, volunteer, witness, attend, de-escalate, whatever it is. One action, and pick a day and time. And then identify one other person to do it with you. One situation, one action, a day and time, and one other person to do it with. Simple. Not necessarily easy, but simple. This matters for personal growth because it builds agency, it builds courage and reliability. You will feel less helpless and more focused. It also has practical spillover effects. You'll learn who to contact. You'll learn how systems work and which habits help you stay consistent. Your network will grow, and your community will be a little safer because you showed up. Since the start of the Trump regime, I've been underwater. First with work, and then getting our house ready to sell and planning a 600-plus mile move back to Michigan. So I did what I could from the margins. I've been trying to build an online community. I've recorded podcasts, and I've written blog posts to help people focus on their values and talk about hard issues with their family and friends. But I've also caught myself using busyness as an alibi for not showing up locally. So I've made a simple first-month commitment for after we're back in Michigan. I'm going to pick one local charity that's supporting community engagement. I'm going to show up with a friend, or I'm going to drag my brother along, and we're going to listen and learn what they're all about. Then we're going to commit to one task and follow through. The online work matters. It scales, but face-to-face is where trust is built and where you can literally stand between harm and the neighbor. And once I've got the lay of the land, I'm going to pick a date, a place, and a person, which will turn this good but vague intention into a commitment. It may feel like a baptism by fire after a long season of, I'll do it later, but that's exactly how we grow our courage and build our communities. One small scheduled step at a time. Putting a date on the calendar and a name next to yours increases follow-through. And repeating small wins turns values into muscle memory. Over time, that's how ordinary people make an extraordinary difference. One clear, scheduled, shared action at a time. Well, before I wrap things up, I'd like to leave you with one more thought. American activist and political leader Bayard Rustin said, "We need, in every community, a group of angelic troublemakers." Now, Rustin's quote is a pretty clear blueprint. Real safety and dignity are protected by ordinary people who are willing to make principled, nonviolent trouble where they live. Angelic is really talking about values, compassion, fairness, human dignity, and troublemakers points to action, showing up, speaking up, and disrupting potential harm. When he says in every community, he's keeping it local and specific, which is exactly what our question challenges you to do. Name one concrete place you can use your position, your time, or resources to build community. Decide exactly what you'll do, set a date, and bring an ally. When you answer that question, you're not just reflecting. You're joining the small, steady group that changes outcomes on the ground. You're joining the neighbor who attends the meeting, the friend who goes with you to volunteer, the person who makes the call and follows through. That's how values move from talk to impact. One scheduled, shared action at a time. So why not be one of the people Bayard Rustin is talking about? Why not be the catalyst that starts building the group of angelic troublemakers that your community needs? All right, we've come to the end of this episode. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back again next week. But in the meantime, I encourage you to engage with our question for the week and pay attention to the important lessons you come across wherever you find them. You'll create a more purposeful and joyful life, and you'll start to feel more connected to the world and the people around you. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Mythologizing the Bible as we did a deeper dive into the readings for the 20th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Cycle C of the Roman Catholic Lectionary. Remember that we don't need permission to do the right thing. We just need commitment. The Bible readings used for this episode are from the Holy Bible, New International Version, NIV, copyright 1973, 1978, 1984, and 2011 by Biblica Inc., used by permission, all rights reserved, worldwide. Thank you again for listening. If you like this content, please consider telling a friend about it. The more people who hear the positive messages I'm sharing, the better. Mythologizing the Bible is a live-streamed series held most Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/thecodaproject. Every week, the audio of these Mythologizing the Bible presentations is released as a podcast. You can find both the podcast and the video versions of the presentations at thecodaproject.com. CODA stands for Creating Our Divine Alignment. When we learn to align our words and actions with our core values, that alignment feels absolutely exquisite. It feels divine. But it's a divine alignment that doesn't require belief in the supernatural. It's a divine alignment we have the ability to create for ourselves. To learn more, to subscribe to my mailing list, and to keep up on everything I'm doing with the Coda Project, please visit thecodaproject.com.